If you've been around a while, you might remember the deadly Ford-Firestone tire fiasco. The law on reporting tire safety issues was changed because of it. Today, there's a federal investigation you probably haven't heard about into a different brand of tire, Goodyear tires once used on motorhomes. Goodyear says the tires are safe, but there are serious allegations of a cover-up.
It was a perfect day for me driving. And golly, we got all the way into Alabama, and we were about 35 miles out of Tuscaloosa.
Norm and Samuel's wife was driving their motorhome in 2002 when they heard a pop. It was the sound of the tread peeling off of one of their Goodyear tires.
The rig dropped down on the left front, and my wife yelled out to me, "Norman, I can't hold it, we're gonna crash." And I said, just do the best you can. It'll all be okay.
It wasn't. They had a catastrophic crash. His wife was pinned in the driver's seat.
She was talking. She was wide awake. It was tough. I could see her head starting to swell a little bit from where she had impacted the windshield. And her left foot was severed completely off. It seemed like it took for an eternity, but the ambulance finally did get there, and she went to the hospital, and she was conscious the whole ride in. But in the operating room, they just couldn't save her. She was just too far gone. Her head was damaged that much.
Samuel, whose dad ran a service station, says he was always a stickler for checking and taking care of his tires. How did you come to believe the tires were defective?
Well, when I saw the tread, actually, I was at the hospital, and a buddy of mine, who was a truck driver, heard about the accident. He had the presence to go back and get the tread, and it might have been a tougher case to prove if he hadn't have found that, but you could put the tread together, and it made the entire tread was all in just one piece.
It turns out the same disaster was hitting other families. In 2003, the Hagers crashed their motorhome in New Mexico after the tread tore off their right front Goodyear tire. All 4 family members inside were hurt. Donna Hager, the grandmother, still suffers from her injuries 17 years later. She was trapped in the rear with a broken jaw, wrist, teeth, foot, ribs, toes, and a severed Achilles tendon. Attorney David Kurtz took the Hager case and received a confidential settlement from Goodyear. But instead of that ending the story, it was only the beginning. You're saying that Goodyear misled the court. There was data showing this problem?
Oh, absolutely. By the time the Hager's accident happened, there had been over 450 highway speed failures of the G159.
But you didn't know that?
I had no idea.
The court battles over Goodyear's G159 have now spanned 2 decades. Kurtz has argued in legal documents that the tire is linked to at least 98 injuries and deaths and hundreds of property damage claims. And the case against the tire maker has expanded into a federal investigation and allegations of a cover-up. The G159 is a tire that was originally made for what?
It was made for stop-and-go delivery vehicles, like a FedEx truck.
But it began to be used for something else.
It also, that particular size, fit on motorhomes. And so Goodyear sold it for that application.
What was the problem with that?
The tire, when it was released, was not subject to any kind of high-speed testing, but it has a temperature limitation that it can't exceed. And that's not a problem when you're stopping and starting in inner-city traffic. But when you get out on the freeways, it would generate excess heat that would slowly degrade the tire until the tread separations followed.
Charges of cover-up come into play because Goodyear hid that key information from the Hagers. It turned up later when a watchdog group called Safety Research and Strategies poured through documents in a Florida case. At highway speeds routinely traveled by motorhomes, Goodyear tests showed the G159 tires generated heat that would be, quote, cause for concern, though thousands of tires were sold for that very purpose.
Understanding we started our lawsuit in the Hager case in 2005. 2012, we finally got the tests that showed that Goodyear had been hiding for years, that showed temperatures in excess of 250 degrees when traveling at freeway speeds.
You allege that Goodyear conspired to keep safety information secret from the public and federal authorities. How?
The federal regulation is pretty, and it has been for a long time, it's really straightforward. It says if you believe there's a defect related to motor vehicle safety, you have to tell the government within 5 days. And Goodyear knew. By 2000, the end of 2000, they knew the tire was defective.
Armed with the new information, Kurtz launched a multi-pronged attack that included new lawsuits against Goodyear and going to the feds. It didn't take long for a federal judge to agree that Goodyear and its attorneys had cheated the Hagers and owed them $2.7 million in penalties. Goodyear appealed, and both sides are still fighting over the amount of the final payment. The trial court judge found the Goodyear team made repeated deliberate decisions to make misleading and false in-court statements and conceal relevant documents. The little voice in every attorney's conscience that murmurs, "Turn over all material information," was ignored. Kurtz filed a separate fraud case against Goodyear, where he questioned Goodyear executive Linda Lovell.
We're on the record, the deposition of Linda Lovell.
Were you aware that there have been over 600 property damage claims alleged to have occurred as a result of G159 failures?
I don't have the specific number, but I'm aware that there were allegations for property damage claims and there were allegations for death and injury. And each one of those, we worked to understand what could be causing those incidents, as we do with any allegation for property damage claim and any allegation for death and injury.
It is truly the worst truck tire made in history, to the best of my knowledge. The most common information people know about is the Firestone failures back in the year 2000 that led to some federal legislation called the TREAD Act for public safety for tire failures. And to the best of our calculations, the Goodyear failure rate is 27 times worse than the Firestone.
Goodyear settled the fraud case for a confidential amount, but the whole controversy was still far from over. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, opened a preliminary investigation into the G159 based on information Kurtz provided. The failures may stem from a safety-related defect, wrote NHTSA. Claimants contend the Goodyear G159 tires were allegedly not designed for extended use at highway speeds, as would be experienced during motorhome operation. Goodyear declined our interview request, but said in a statement, "Nothing is more important to Goodyear than the safety of the associates who produce our products and the consumers who use them. We continue to believe that there is no safety defect with the G159 tire. We are fully cooperating with NHTSA on their investigation." It's been 13 years since Goodyear settled Norman Samuel's case for a confidential amount. He says he still finds himself looking at random motorhomes to see if their tires are G159s.
Goodyear is a huge company and employs thousands of people, and I'm sure that most of them are just as great as they can be. But somewhere along the line, somebody slipped up, and they've let this thing, I think, kind of snowball, and they didn't take the right action at the right time and save some people's lives.
NHTSA wouldn't tell us what's next, but if Goodyear is found to have been deceptive, it could owe up to $105 million in penalties.